security guarantees. Washington says it'll give it in writing next week. It follows in-depth talks between Russia and NATO, although Russia did say those negotiations highlighted continuing differences, with Ukraine ultimately being the main stumbling block. Though let's shed some light and get the real scoop with RT's Charlotte Dubinsky.
How do you solve a problem like Russia?
The easiest and the fastest way is for Russia to de-escalate.
It is Russia that has to make a stark choice: de-escalation in diplomacy or confrontation and consequences.
That was the view from the US and NATO after they held a series of meetings with their Russian counterparts. On the one hand, they repeatedly said that they were there to find solutions. On the other, that solution was, some have suggested, one-sided. Russia has to make giant strides towards reducing its military presence anywhere near Ukraine if there is to be a de-escalation of tensions. For the Russian delegation, the doublespeak was too much.
We are fed up with loose talk, half promises, misinterpretation of what happened at different forms of negotiations behind closed doors. We do not trust the other side, so to say. We need ironclad, waterproof, bulletproof, legally binding guarantees, not assurances, not safeguards, guarantees.
Russia was also accused of not being serious about finding solutions to ease the frictions as it continued to deny its planning to invade Ukraine. Moscow said it had put forward clear proposals before the meetings took place, outlining what assurances it wanted from the West for its own security. That crucially included NATO slamming the door on membership to post-Soviet countries like Ukraine. Moscow also hit out that NATO's idea of security didn't extend to non-members.
NATO expansion doesn't solve any problems of security. It moves division lines, but doesn't remove them.
So this idea that, for instance, NATO enlargement is aggressive, absolutely not true. NATO enlargement has been a cornerstone for the spread of democracy and freedom across Europe.
NATO regurgitated the line that it is not a threat to Russia. Moscow didn't agree.
The US and NATO continue to conquer, militarily, the territories of the countries included in the alliance and place offensive weapons systems there. This directly poses a threat to the interests of the Russian Federation.
A final stab was made at finding common ground in Vienna at the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, a supposedly neutral ground where, unfortunately, the language from country representatives was anything but.
It seems that the risk of war in the OSCE area is now greater than ever before in the last 30 years.
The Europeans also went down the smear campaign route, following a massive cyber attack on government sites in Ukraine. The EU's top diplomat hinting one can figure out who is behind the strike. The hackers have not yet been identified. And while the West continues to state it has spread democracy and brought security to countries, Russia's foreign minister disagrees.
The West went too far, let's be frank. In violation of all international obligations and common sense, they chose to escalate this situation. Well, you see, the West condemns violent actions against civilians. They condemn human rights violations. But when bloody coups are carried out by those who swear their allegiance to the West embraces them. This is what happened with the Ukrainian coup. Many people died there, including at the hands of provocateurs. And this coup was approved by the United States, and the Europeans just accepted that as fact. And no one is going to investigate the Maidan atrocities.
A mammoth week of talks has ended with, well, a lot of hot air. No concrete proposals to move things forward. The only thing that they saw eye to eye on, really, was just how far apart they are, and that if talks fail, the consequences could be catastrophic. Charlotte Dubinsky, RT.